The galaxy had long been dominated by the Galactic Empire. For centuries, their fleets had swept across the stars, conquering worlds, crushing any who dared to resist. Their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers made them feel untouchable. They were the epitome of power. But when the first human fleet entered their space, they laughed it off as a mere nuisance. No one could have predicted the storm humanity was about to bring. The humans had never been part of the grand galactic wars. They had lived on the fringe, unnoticed, their tiny planet Earth tucked away in a quiet corner of the galaxy. But the Empire, in its infinite arrogance, had decided that even this insignificant species must bend to their rule. They had sent a small task force of warships, nothing compared to the might of their full fleet, to deliver a warning to Earth. This would be a lesson. They would show the humans their place. But as the Empire's ships emerged from hyperspace above Earth, they were met with a surprise they could never have imagined. The small human fleet didn't seem like much at first glance. Their ships, older models and barely equipped for large-scale conflict, seemed like relics compared to the sleek, advanced warships of the Empire. But the humans were resourceful, and more importantly, they understood how to fight with what they had. As the Imperial task force moved into position, expecting an easy victory, they began to realize something was off. There was a quiet intensity about the humans, a calm in the face of overwhelming odds. And then, the first strike came. The Empire's task force had barely begun to deploy their attack strategy when the humans launched their counterattack. It wasn't a grand, coordinated strike like the Empire was accustomed to. No, it was far more subtle, far more dangerous. The humans had studied the Empire's tactics, learning from every inch of battle data they could gather. They understood the strengths of the Imperial fleets, but more importantly, they had discovered the weaknesses. And it was these weaknesses they exploited with surgical precision. In the first wave, the humans disabled several of the Empire's warships with well-placed, highly accurate shots to their engine cores. It wasn't just brute force, it was calculated, intelligent warfare. The Imperial officers were stunned. They had expected to crush the humans with overwhelming firepower, but instead they found themselves on the defensive. Their warships, despite their superior technology, were being picked apart, one by one, with eerie precision. The human ships, though outgunned and outnumbered, seemed to move like predators, finding weak points in the Empire's defenses and exploiting them ruthlessly. Chaos erupted across the Imperial fleet. Ships attempted evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The humans had already anticipated their every move. The battle became a nightmare for the Empire. Imperial officers screamed orders, but the humans were always one step ahead, anticipating every counterattack. Within hours, the first human fleet had reduced the Empire's task force to a fraction of its original strength. And then came the second wave. This time, the humans didn't wait for the Empire to regroup. They attacked with even more ferocity, using every trick in the book: electronic warfare, decoys, and advanced combat tactics that left the Empire's commanders scratching their heads. The battle turned from an Imperial victory into a massacre. In the heart of the chaos, a message was sent back to the Empire's high command. It was short, to the point, and utterly chilling. The humans haven't even deployed their main fleet yet. This single line was enough to send shockwaves through the Empire. It wasn't the humans' victory in the battle that was so frightening, it was the realization that the humans had barely begun to fight. The Empire's best fleets had been decimated by what they thought were just a handful of human warships, and yet the humans had only just shown a fraction of their power. The full force of humanity's military was still waiting, hidden in the depths of their system. Back on Earth, the leaders of the human fleets gathered, watching as their ships returned victorious. They hadn't anticipated such an easy win, but they had planned for it nonetheless. Their forces were prepared for a much longer struggle, but this unexpected victory had confirmed something important. Humanity had something the Empire didn't understand: a will to fight. The humans would not back down, no matter how overwhelming the odds. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something more. Their freedom, their right to exist without being controlled by an empire that saw them as insignificant. And now, the Empire knew it.as news of the victory spread across the galaxy, Panic began to take hold in imperial strongholds. The Empire had always prided itself on its military superiority, but now they were faced with an enemy who didn't follow the rules, didn't bow down to their might, and wasn't afraid of them. What the Empire didn't understand was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or technology. It was in their resilience. No matter how many times they were knocked down, humans always got back up. The Imperial Senate convened an emergency meeting. For the first time in years, there was no confidence in their leaders' decisions. The battle had been a humiliating defeat, and now the Empire was forced to confront a terrifying truth. The humans were not the weak species they had assumed them to be. In fact, they were more dangerous than any of the Empire's previous enemies. Their unpredictability, their adaptability, and their willingness to fight with everything they had made them a threat like no other. ASE, the Empire's leaders debated their next move. Another message came in from Earth. This one was brief, but it left a chilling impression. We are not done. Prepare for what's coming. And with that, the galaxy began to realize that humanity had not only awakened, they had just begun their fight. The Empire might have underestimated them once, but it would not make that mistake again. The first strike was only the beginning, and the humans had already proven they were more than capable of winning the war. The Galactic Empire had never faced a threat like this before. For centuries, they had reigned supreme, their fleets terrorizing the galaxy, their technology unmatched. But after the shocking defeat of their task force by humanity's small and seemingly insignificant fleet, something had changed. The Empire, which had once been a symbol of invincibility, now found itself shaking with uncertainty. It was a strange feeling fear, the kind of fear that gnawed at the edges of every Imperial officer's mind and crept into the very heart of the Emperor's court. In the wake of the defeat, there was an unsettling silence in the Empire's command centers. The usual confident chatter had turned into hushed whispers. Officials who had once proudly paraded their military might now avoided eye contact, unsure of what to say, unsure of what to do. The humans, a species that had never before played a significant role in galactic conflicts, had struck hard, and they had struck fast. The Empire had expected them to crumble under the weight of their military might. Instead, the humans had shown them the opposite, a ruthlessness, an adaptability that the Empire had never anticipated. The message had been clear: the humans were not to be underestimated. Among the higher ranks of the Empire, fear began to fester. It wasn't the kind of fear one might expect from a defeated army. It was something deeper. It was a growing dread that whispered through every chamber, every hallway, and every strategy room of the Empire's vast citadels. What if the humans had more fleets hidden away? What if they had been holding back this entire time? These questions couldn't be ignored any longer. The Empire's leaders, from the highest generals to the Emperor himself, were beginning to realize that they had misjudged humanity. The small task force that had been wiped out in the first engagement had only been a fraction of the full human military. What would happen if the humans deployed their entire fleet? What if the galaxy wasn't just facing an unexpected enemy but an unstoppable one? As the weeks passed, the fear deepened. Every report from the front lines only made things worse. Imperial commanders who had been sent to counter the humans reported more defeats, more humiliations. The humans weren't just winning, they were dismantling the Empire's forces with methodical precision. There was no mercy in their attacks. Every victory, every successful strike by the humans made it clear that they were only getting stronger, more organized. The fact that they had only sent a fraction of their fleet to fight had become a growing nightmare. What if the main human fleet was 10 times more powerful? 20 times more powerful? In the private chambers of the Emperor, the mood was tense. The once mighty ruler of the Empire sat in his grand seat, his hands clenched tightly on the armrests. His face was a mask of frustration and anger. The reports that came to him each day were increasingly filled with troubling news. The humans had continued to press forward, cutting down Imperial forces like weeds in a garden. They weren't just defeating the Empire's military, they were shattering its morale. It had taken only a few defeats to make the Empire question its superiority, but now, the thought of facing the full might of humanity's fleet filled even the most seasoned officers with unease. "I've never seen the Empire so afraid," one of the Emperor's advisors whispered, his voice trembling. They're not like the others. We thought we could crush them, but they just keep coming. And now they're asking for a fight on their terms." The Emperor didn't answer immediately. He simply stared out of the window, his thoughts racing. He had always believed that his empire was the most powerful force in the galaxy, that nothing could stand in their way. But these humans, they were different. They didn't fight like any other species he had ever encountered. There was an intensity to them that was unsettling, and the silence from Earth, from their government, was deafening. The humans had made no demands, issued no threats, they had simply fought. And they had won. For the first time in his life, the Emperor wondered if his empire was truly invincible. The reports made it clear humanity had something the Empire had never prepared for: determination. A relentless drive to survive, to protect what they loved, and to push back against the forces of tyranny. And that determination was driving them forward, even when they were outmatched. In one of the Empire's most secure military command rooms, a meeting was called. High-ranking generals and strategists from across the galaxy had gathered, their faces grim as they looked over the latest intelligence. The situation was worse than they had imagined. The humans hadn't just defeated their task force, they had done it using tactics that the Empire had never seen before. The human fleet wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. Their ships were not the most advanced, nor were they the largest, but they were incredibly adaptive. Each battle had made them stronger, their tactics more refined, and each defeat had only sharpened their resolve. "They're too clever for us," one of the generals admitted, his voice low with frustration. "We thought we could crush them with brute force, but their adaptability is beyond anything we expected." Another general nodded. "We've underestimated them for too long. And now, we're paying the price." The fear in the room was palpable. It wasn't just the fear of losing battles, it was the fear of losing the entire war. The Emperor had never been in such a position. For all his years of rule, he had never seen his empire so close to its breaking point. The humans were relentless, and their influence was spreading faster than anyone could control. It seemed as though every day brought new reports of new victories against imperial forces, and new stories of humanity's growing strength. As the fear took hold, the Empire's leadership was divided. Some believed it was time to negotiate with the humans, to offer peace and make concessions. They feared that if they didn't, they would face the full might of humanity's fleet, a fleet that was now rumored to be far more powerful than anyone had dared to imagine. Others, however, refused to entertain such thoughts. They wanted to fight, to show the humans that the Empire could not be brought down. They were willing to risk everything, even if it meant facing an enemy they didn't fully understand. Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans were watching the Empire's fear grow. But they were not content with simply sitting back and letting the Empire crumble. They had plans of their own, and their resolve was growing stronger with every victory. They knew what they were up against, and they knew it would be a long and difficult fight. But one thing was certain: they were ready. The growing fear in the Empire wasn't just about losing a battle or a fleet. It was the fear of a species they could no longer control, a species that refused to bow to the will of an empire that had thought itself all-powerful. The fear was real. The humans were no longer just a nuisance. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity. For years, they had believed the humans to be a fledgling species, insignificant on the galactic scale. Their fleets, though growing stronger, were still small compared to the Empire's massive war machines. The Empire's spies had reported on Earth, showing a people struggling with their own internal conflicts, their technology lagging far behind the mighty systems of the Empire. They had believed that it was only a matter of time before the humans would be crushed, their fragile existence extinguished by the sheer power of the Empire. But after the first few clashes, something unexpected began to unfold. Humanity had a hidden power, and it wasn't just their technology. The first battles had been brutal, and the Empire's forces had been shocked by the unexpected resilience of the human fleets. The small task force they had sent to engage the humans had been wiped out with precision, their own strategies turned against them. What was worse was the overwhelming sense that the humans had held back. As the Empire's commanders pored over the wreckage of their once proud ships, they couldn't ignore the feeling that they had barely scratched the surface of humanity's strength. There was something deeper, something beneath the human resolve that they hadn't accounted for. It was almost as if the humans were waiting, holding something back, preparing for the right moment to unleash it. But what was it? The Empire's intelligence had failed to find the answer. The humans were not just fighting back, they were adapting at an alarming rate. Every encounter with them taught the humans something new, something the Empire couldn't anticipate. They were learning faster than the Empire could adjust, and it was causing panic at the highest levels. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to grow and evolve under pressure. What the Empire didn't realize was that humanity's true power was not just in their weapons, or their fleets, or their military strategy. It was in their spirit. In the Empire's command chambers, high-ranking officers gathered to discuss the latest reports. "We've seen their tactics, their technology," said one of the generals, his voice low with frustration. "But there's something else. Something that doesn't make sense. They don't just fight, they believe in their cause. We've never seen anything like it. It's like they're fueled by something far greater than just survival." "What is it?" The silence in the room grew thick. No one could answer. The reports showed it clearly. After every battle, the humans came back stronger. They learned. They adapted. The Empire had never faced an enemy like this. Even their most seasoned commanders were now asking the same question: what is it that makes the humans so resilient? The Emperor sat alone in his private chambers, his hands steepled in thought. His mind raced, trying to comprehend what had gone wrong. His empire, which had once crushed entire civilizations with ease, now found itself struggling to deal with a species that wasn't supposed to be a threat. There had been no signs, no clues. Earth's people were young, untested, and had never been part of the galactic stage until recently. The Emperor's thoughts were interrupted by a report. Another small human fleet had just won a decisive victory. It wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be the last. "This is madness," the Emperor muttered to himself. "How are they doing this? What are they hiding?" He ordered his top intelligence officers to scour every corner of the galaxy for answers, but what they discovered only made the situation worse. The humans weren't just using better tactics. They were using something far more profound: their unity. There was an unspoken bond between the humans. They fought not just for themselves, but for each other, for their families, for their world. They fought with a sense of purpose that the Empire had never seen before. The humans had something the Empire could never understand: a belief in each other, in their survival, in their future. As the reports continued to flood in, a terrifying realization dawned on the Empire. Humanity's power was not just in their advanced technology, though they had developed weapons of unimaginable power. Their true strength lay in their ability to connect, to work together, and to believe in the cause of survival and freedom. The more the Empire pressed the humans, the stronger they seemed to become. They didn't break under pressure. Instead, they grew more determined, more united, more focused. Humanity's hidden power was a force of will that couldn't be measured by the same standards the Empire had always relied on. It wasn't about numbers or technology, it was about heart. The humans had faced adversity for millennia, and each struggle had only made them stronger. The Empire had seen species fall apart under pressure, their resolve shattered in the face of overwhelming force. But humanity had survived the darkest of times. They had come together in ways the Empire couldn't understand. Their unity, their adaptability, their fierce drive to protect what they loved, these were the qualities that gave humanity its true power. And now, the Empire was facing the consequences of that power. On the ground, in the depths of Earth's underground military command, the leaders of humanity met in secret. They knew the Empire would never understand their strength. The Empire saw them as a fractured species, divided by politics, by culture, by history. What the Empire didn't know was that, when pushed to the limit, humanity could come together like no other species in the galaxy. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about resilience, about fighting for their future, and about never giving up. And in that unity, the humans had found something the Empire could never defeat. The leader of humanity's resistance, Commander Sophia Kale, stood before her people, her eyes blazing with the fire of determination. "They thought we were weak," she said, her voice steady but filled with unshakable conviction. "They thought they could break us. But what they don't understand is that we don't fight for ourselves. We fight for our children, our families, and the future of Earth. This war is not just about winning battles. It's about proving that we will never be silenced, that we will never bow down to tyranny. We will rise together, and we will show them the strength of humanity." Her words rippled through her commanders, her soldiers, and her people. The truth was clear. Humanity's true power wasn't in the weapons they wielded, but in the unbreakable bond that held them together. As long as that bond existed, the Empire would never crush them. The more the Empire pushed, the stronger humanity would become. In the depths of the Empire's war rooms, the fear only deepened. Reports continued to arrive, showing the humans growing stronger by the day. But the Empire couldn't understand why. Their fleets, their strategies, their superior technology, none of it seemed to matter against the relentless power of humanity's unity. The Empire had no way to stop it. They had no way to understand it. The Emperor, once confident and unyielding, began to question his own decisions. Had the Empire truly underestimated humanity? Had they overlooked the one thing that no amount of technology or force could conquer? Humanity's hidden power wasn't something the Empire could fight with ships or weapons. It was something deeper, something intangible. It was their spirit. And in that spirit, the humans had found a power the Empire could never match. The war had escalated far beyond what the Galactic Empire had expected. They had anticipated a brief conflict, one that would crush humanity under the might of their superior fleets and weapons. But now, after months of intense fighting, the Empire's forces were struggling. Humanity, though smaller and less advanced in comparison, had fought back with an intensity and determination that defied all logic. They had taken a stand that sent shockwaves through the Empire. Each time the Empire thought they had the upper hand, the humans would adapt, finding ways to exploit weaknesses and turn the tide. It was as though they were learning faster than the Empire could react. This wasn't supposed to happen. And now, with each passing day, the Empire's grip on the galaxy began to slip. The Emperor's private chambers were tense, filled with high-ranking generals and commanders, each one a nervous wreck. The reports were grim, showing how the humans were growing stronger with every battle. What began as an insignificant conflict had now become an all-out war, and the Empire was on the defensive. Humanity's unexpected resilience was baffling. The Empire had always believed in the supremacy of their power, but now they were questioning their very foundations. In a room filled with silence, one of the generals finally spoke, his voice shaky but filled with urgency. "Your Excellency, we've lost another fleet. The humans have outmaneuvered us once again. They've somehow learned to anticipate our tactics. We've underestimated them." The Emperor's face twisted in frustration. His empire had ruled for eons, crushing enemies with ease, but now it felt as though it was on the verge of collapse. The humans were unpredictable. They fought not just with weapons, but with something that the Empire could never fully understand: their will to survive. The Emperor clenched his fists, his mind racing. If the humans continued at this rate, they would never stop. There was only one option left, something he had sworn never to resort to. But now, it seemed like the only way. "Prepare the final plan," the Emperor commanded, his voice low and chilling. "We will use the Colossus Project. If the humans won't fall under the weight of our military might, we will crush them with sheer force." The Colossus Project was the Empire's last and most desperate weapon, a planet-destroying weapon so powerful it could wipe out entire civilizations in a single strike. For generations, it had been kept hidden, a secret weapon to be used only in the most dire of situations. The Empire had always relied on their military might to maintain control, but now, faced with an enemy they could not understand, they had no choice. They had to resort to the Colossus Project, to obliterate Earth and break the spirit of humanity once and for all. But as the Emperor gave the orders, a voice rose from the shadows. One of his most trusted generals, General Velkin, stepped forward, his face pale with fear. "Your Excellency," he began, his voice shaky, "if we use the Colossus, we will destroy not just Earth, but every trace of humanity. We will be wiping out an entire species. Can we really afford to do that?" The Emperor turned on him sharply, his eyes burning with a cold fire. "Do you doubt the Empire, General? Do you question my orders?" Velkin recoiled, his heart pounding in his chest. He'd been loyal to the Emperor for decades, but even now, the weight of the decision was unbearable. "No, Your Excellency," he whispered, "but we will lose something more than just Earth. We will lose our humanity in the process, and I fear we may never regain it." The room fell silent, the tension thick. The Emperor's gaze lingered on Velkin for a moment before he spoke again, his tone icy. "If humanity refuses to bend, then they will be erased. It's the only way to ensure the survival of the Empire. There is no other choice." Meanwhile, on Earth, the situation was growing dire. Humanity had fought with everything they had, but they knew they couldn't hold out forever. The Empire's fleets were overwhelming, and the losses were mounting. Yet, despite the fear and desperation that gripped many, a small group of humanity's leaders were determined to stand firm. They knew the Empire would not stop. They knew the Colossus project was coming. And they knew that the only way to survive was to fight with everything they had, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Commander Sophia Kyle, leader of the resistance, sat in a darkened command center, her face tense as she reviewed the latest reports. Her heart was heavy, but she couldn't allow herself to give in to despair. Not yet. They still had a chance. They had to believe that. "We can't let them destroy us," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We've faced impossible odds before, and we've come through stronger each time. We've got to strike first. We can't wait for them to hit us with the Colossus." Her team nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They knew what they had to do. The Empire had the firepower, but humanity had something they could never replicate: their will to survive. They would strike hard and fast, do everything in their power to slow the Empire down, to give their people a chance. "We'll take the fight to them," Sophia said. "We'll show them that humanity can never be crushed, no matter what they throw at us." The decision was made. There was no turning back now. The humans would fight with everything they had, but the odds were impossible. The Colossus project was a threat unlike any other, and the Resistance knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire unleashed it. But they had no choice. The last hope for humanity rested in their hands. Back in the Empire's command center, the final preparations for the Colossus project were underway. The countdown had begun, and the weapon was ready. The Emperor, despite his confidence, could feel a lingering doubt at the back of his mind. This would be the end of humanity. There could be no survivors. But as the seconds ticked down, a strange sense of unease crept over him. What if the humans refused to break? What if their will was stronger than even the Colossus? The question gnawed at him, but he shook it off. There was no other choice. The Colossus would destroy them all. The human spirit would be extinguished. The Empire would remain supreme. As the final moments approached, both sides braced for the ultimate confrontation. For the humans, it was a desperate fight for survival. For the Empire, it was a calculated decision to wipe out their enemy once and for all. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. In the darkness of space, both the humans and the Empire stood on the precipice of a new chapter. A chapter that would either mark the end of humanity's struggle or prove that even the most desperate of decisions could never break the human spirit. The galaxy was on the edge of chaos. The once mighty galactic empire, which had ruled for centuries with an iron fist, was now faced with an enemy they couldn't fully understand: humanity. For months, the Empire had tried to crush the human resistance, but with each battle, the humans only seemed to grow stronger. Their unpredictability, their tenacity, and their unwillingness to back down were qualities that the Empire couldn't comprehend. The Empire, with all its advanced technology and superior military power, had never encountered such an unyielding enemy. In the heart of the Empire's military command, a group of high-ranking officers sat around a large table, their faces tense. They'd have been tracking the humans' movements for weeks, but there was something new on the horizon. A message had been intercepted, a communication that had come directly from Earth. The humans had never sent a direct message to the Empire before. It was a moment that sent chills down the spines of every officer in the room. What could they possibly want? Was it a trap or something more dangerous? General Zake, one of the Empire's most ruthless commanders, slammed his fist onto the table, his anger rising. What is this nonsense? Why would they send a message now, after all this time? We've beaten their fleets time and again, crushed their resistance. Why send a message now, unless it's a desperate attempt to buy more time? His second-in-command, Colonel Vicara, looked over the data on the screen. It's strange, General. The message is not a plea for mercy, nor is it a threat. It's something else. We've never seen anything like this before. Zake's patience was wearing thin. Then what is it? The message from Sol, Earth's home system, was short but chilling in its simplicity. It read, "We've seen your fleets, and we're not afraid." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that sent a ripple of unease through the room. It wasn't the words themselves, but the tone. It was as if the humans were taunting them, as if they were daring the Empire to make a move. It was a challenge, an invitation to escalate the conflict even further. And what made it more unsettling was the fact that it came directly from Earth, the heart of humanity. Zake's fists tightened. This is absurd. How dare they speak to us like this? Do they not understand the power of the Empire? Vecara's expression remained calm, but the unease in her voice was hard to hide. It's not a typical message, General. It's almost confident, like they know something we don't. For a moment, the room fell silent. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, each of them feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. The Empire had always been the dominant force in the galaxy, and now, for the first time, they were being confronted by an enemy that wasn't afraid. That in itself was a terrifying thought. Back on Earth, the message had been sent by Commander Sophia Kale, the leader of the human resistance. She had been planning this moment for weeks, knowing full well the risk it entailed. Sending a message directly to the Empire was a bold move, but it was necessary. The humans needed to show the Empire that they weren't afraid, that they had no intention of surrendering. It was a way to strike back, to show that despite the overwhelming odds, humanity would not fall. Sophia sat in a dimly lit room, staring at the blinking screen in front of her. She knew the message would reach the Empire's command center soon, but she wasn't sure what their response would be. Would they retaliate with even greater force? Would they send the full might of their fleet to Earth? She didn't know, but she couldn't afford to back down now. Humanity's survival depended on showing the Empire that they would fight. "I know what they're thinking," Sophia muttered to herself, her eyes narrowing. "They think we're afraid. They think we'll crumble under their pressure. But they're wrong." The silence in her command center was deafening as her officers and crew waited for the Empire's response. The message had been sent. Now all they could do was wait. Hours later, the response came, and it was even more chilling than anyone could have imagined. The Empire's reply was simple, yet it carried an undeniable threat. "Your resistance is futile. You will submit, or we will destroy you." The message echoed through the command center, and for a moment there was silence. The threat was unmistakable. The Empire was prepared to obliterate Earth, to crush humanity once and for all. But what the Empire didn't know was that humanity had one weapon they couldn't account for: their ability to adapt, to rise against impossible odds. Sophia's jaw tightened as she read the message. It was what she had expected, but it still sent a chill through her. The Empire's confidence was dangerous, but it was also a sign of their arrogance. They thought they had humanity cornered. They thought they could wipe them out with one final blow. But Sophia knew something the Empire didn't. The humans had one advantage the Empire couldn't understand: their ability to endure. While the Empire relied on brute force, humanity had always relied on ingenuity, on cleverness, on an unbreakable will to survive. The Empire underestimated that, and it would be their downfall. As she looked around the room, she saw the determination in the eyes of her officers and crew. They were scared, yes, but they were also resolute. They had faced the Empire's wrath before and lived to fight another day. Now, it was time for the Empire to see just how wrong they were about humanity's resolve. "We're not done yet," Sophia said, her voice steady and filled with determination. "This is just the beginning. We will make them pay for every moment they thought we would surrender. We'll fight until the last breath." The Empire had underestimated humanity before, but now they were about to face a force they could never truly understand, the strength of a species that would never back down, no matter how dire the situation. And the message from Sol was only the beginning of humanity's fight for survival. Asf, the Empire prepared their next move. The Resistance knew that they had already won the first battle. They had shown the Empire that they would never break. And in doing so, they had given hope to every human who believed that they could survive this war. The fight was far from over, but humanity's spirit had been reignited. The Empire would soon learn that their greatest mistake was underestimating the power of the human will.